1 year ago, news of the deaths of 4 university students ripped through the community of Moscow.
The families of Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie are remembering their lives.
She was the best child I could have asked for.
This thing took one of our kids, but it can't take the rest of us.
Now a community is forever changed.
I think about halfway through the vigil, I just started crying, and I couldn't stop.
In special coverage, Krem 2 is live tonight as the community gathers to reflect on the Moscow murders 1 year later.
It's just going to take time for us all.
In November of 2022, Kaylee Gonclaves, Madison Mogan, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle were staying at a rental house off campus from the University of Idaho, resting in the small town of Moscow. 2 other anonymous students were staying at the home as well. In the early hours of November 13th, the 4 named students would be brutally stabbed to death. The stabbings would remain a mystery for weeks, until an arrest was made December 30th of 2022. Brian Christopher Cohenberg was arrested as the main suspect of the investigation. In May of last year, in a hearing where Brian was represented by a lawyer, entered to a judge a not guilty plea on the 4 charges against him. Prosecutors for the case are pushing for a trial date sometime in the summer of this year. Due to no trial taking place to determine the innocence or guilt of the accused, these are all still allegations that need to be investigated and tried in a court of law. This was only a brief overview of the case that really shocked the world in 2022. It's been a little over a year since then, and my heart really goes out to the families who lost their children in such a terrible way. Waiting for a trial for this long to see justice for what was their whole world, I just can't imagine what that feels like. Because in the meantime, in the wake of their tragedies, there have been a lot of talk in regards to their children and their lives as people. People speculate, assuming that they know better than the families do about their deceased loved ones. And one person who has boggled my curiosity, who I honestly believe is actually insane, is a user on TikTok who essentially is passing off murder fanfiction as the truth. I know wording it in that kind of way is not the most respectful way that I could put it. I'm kind of being like sarcastic and cheeky about it. But nah, this is just straight up just taking a fantasy and applying it to a real situation that actually happened to real people in the real world. So TikTok sucks, and saying that isn't a new opinion. I don't know if it's like a groundbreaking thing to say, but if it is, I said it, and I'm usually right about most things, so it must be true. I stopped using TikTok last year, and honestly, I hate what short-form content has done to my patience and my brain. You know, now that I think about it, maybe this is why I make, like, long-form content all the time, because I demanded better, and we got the shit! I have to make YouTube shorts now! This is ridiculous! So I figured if nothing is gonna change, I ought to do it myself. But doing that is hard, and it takes a lot of money, and time, and effort, all of which I don't really have, but I'm gonna try anyway. Anyways, welcome to yet another long, convoluted video about nonsense that doesn't really matter. Here's a brief history on psychics. I promise it's related to the video. You see, the belief in a higher ability beyond what humans are capable of has been a concept since the dawn of time. Telepathy, clairvoyance, and the ability to speak to beings beyond the realm of reality.
This is not reality, not reality.
People have been seeking power beyond what we are capable of through either spirituality or religious practice. Astrology is one of the oldest practices used to transcribe the future or give guidance to people's lives through the stars. Astrology nowadays is just something to kind of pass the time. You know, check your horoscope for the day, see if Mercury's in retrograde, determine if the constellations want you to go to war with Russia. You know, that sort of stuff. I know that kind of felt like it just came out of nowhere, but I'm not even shitting you. Ronald Reagan did rely on astrological advice from a White House astrologer that was part of his administration. This is not a joke. Her name was Joan Quigley, and Nancy Reagan asked her to look into the future to prevent another assassination attempt on her husband. Ronald Reagan married an astro girly. I literally can't. So nowadays, a lot of these psychic mediums are more so just seen as either performance art or, if they're selling their abilities, a scam. A lot of that has to do with, like, religion taking precedent and calling everything against the Bible witchcraft, essentially, and the evolving sciences that kind of chalk this all up to hogwash anyways. Still, though, I don't want to be a dick, right? Because there are a lot of people that find comfort in believing in this sort of stuff. And if people like to play with tarot cards, crystals, the constellations, whatever, if that's what they like and if that's part of their lifestyle, then who am I to rain on their parade? I would like to point out, though, the United States government established a unit as part of their army to investigate and implement psychic phenomenon as part of a domestic intelligence operation known as the Stargate Project. They sank $20 million into this thing, and the conclusion that they came up with was they couldn't replicate any psychic abilities. Keep in mind, this thing started back in the 70s, which, considering it was the 70s, that makes sense, but it didn't come to a close until 1995. America is a joke. Okay, I promise this video is not me just trying to radicalize you. I am going to talk about the crazy TikTok psychic lady. That's what this video is about. I promise you we're going to get to it. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Lazy, and if you see me in your dreams tonight, it's not because I've committed any sort of crime yet. It's because I'm trying to send you a message to spend more money on my Patreon using auditory hallucinations.
Funding for the Lazy Bedhead channel was provided by viewers like you. Thank you.
Guillard. Well, Ashley Guillard is an author who has several books available now on Amazon. And these books can vary from business strategy guides to murder mystery to feminist writings and manifestations and believing yourself to be of a higher power. Now, there have been some of her books that do have good reviews, but then there are those that were downvoted. Now, this could be because these books aren't that well written. A lot of the people who are commenting on her Amazon page seem to be people that actually have read the books and just didn't like them very much, but later actions may have some sway in the negative press that her work has been getting recently. A lot of this person's notoriety comes from her social media. She had primarily used Instagram and TikTok, both of which have gone offline. However, all of her content has been re-uploaded to her YouTube account, which she has been posting to for 5 years. Her TikTok page combined the aspects of psychic medium and true crime, which historically has never been a safe combination. But we can save talking about the true crime aspect of her content later. In the very beginning, she would just do regular tarot card readings, which is pretty common in terms of like TikTok psychics. But even before she would pull her stunt on TikTok that would put her in the limelight as a person of interest, she was shown to have a pattern of instability in her older YouTube content. Ashley's earlier videos are more so just videos that either advise or directly taught lessons from her own writings. She made horoscope videos, talked about the concept of twin flames, which is basically the same concept of like soulmates or something. And if this was all she was doing, just being like an astral girly, then I don't think anyone would have a huge issue with her. The problem with her is all of the conspiracy content. I mean, it's not really going into like crazy conspiracies. It's more so just like asking really absurd questions that no one ever asked and answering that question with a tarot card reading. Don't look at me like that. And with this woman, it's always tarot cards, as you'll come to find. How did Cardi B gain success? Was it the Illuminati, God, or hard work? Why did Nicki Minaj retire from rap? Tarot card reading, inside scoop, hip-hop. Now, you'd think that asking that sort of question, she'd pull like a Shallon Lester or something, like briefly read an article and like pretend to know what she's talking about, and be like an internet gossiper, but no, she figures out all this stuff through tarot card readings. I mean, some of the videos make sense for tarot card readings, the ones that have to do like with astrology. Yeah, that would make sense. But random celebrities and their personal shit also gets tarot card readings too. I think the most bizarre ones though, and morally speaking, probably the most egregious ones, are any that involve a tragic death or a murder case. Aaron Dean, murderer of Tatiana Jefferson, will get life in prison or death. Tarot card reading. Rip Tati. Kobe Bryant. Tarot reading on the death of Kobe Bryant. 1/28/2020. It's just pulling a J station, why don't you?
Obviously, I do not support slavery at all, guys. So tonight we are going to buy one of these.
And she has done a lot of coverage on the death of George Floyd. She says in these videos that she has insider scoop on what the cops were thinking about during the trial, during the time of the murders, why they would have done this. And if that's the case, you would think that maybe she's some sort of journalist with good insider knowledge or connections, or maybe she just cites a good source. No, again, it's referring to those damn cards. I'd also like to point this out too in some of her content. This is like a major nitpick, but I thought it was funny to point this out. On her table where all of her tarot cards are, there's just like a single Uno reverse card. Just imagine Uno reversing the future. Now look, I'm a dabbler myself in the tarot trade. One of my biggest hopes someday is to make my own tarot deck with my own artwork. Personally, I love deck artwork like this. I actually have 2 tarot decks on me, and the art is awesome in both of them. But I just think that doing tarot readings to figure out the motive behind a man's death a month after it happens, it's really fucking weird. And of course, all of these videos age like milk later when the trial happens. So cracks of crazy are already in this girl's foundation, but it can't get any worse than this, right? I mean, speculation on an arrest and what's going to happen at a murder trial is something I think that we're all kind of familiar with. But I don't think many of us would predict what's going on with our current events with the fanciest game of Go Fish. But I mean, it's not like this speculation is slanderous or anything. She's just kind of like saying things on the internet to a small audience of other spectators. I mean, what could possibly be wrong with that? How could this possibly go wrong? It went very wrong very quickly.
Huh?
During the rise of her TikTok relevance on the account Ashley is the Book of Life, within spiritual hashtags and communities on TikTok, Ashley was doing something unique with her content. Uniquely questionable, anyways. See, a lot of the tarot reading, horoscope side of the app maybe did live readings for people. Stitch replied to comments asking for a reading, did daily horoscopes, all of this just innocent fun, right? But Ashley was different in the fact that she wasn't offering her services outright online to just about anyone for the good vibes. She was solving murder cases. Ashley is very different from the average TikTok kooks that orients their entire content to talking to dead people. She was becoming like an offshoot detective and saying things that would sway those in her audience to conclusions about public cases that were easily disproven with a Google search. Outside of just talking about the George Floyd case, there were other cases that she would bring to her TikTok page that would act as stepping stones to what would become her most infamous post yet. But before we even get into that, let's go over her lesser known minor offenses of slander. I say minor offenses, but like it's all fucking bad. Like I don't know why I downplay it. It's all fucking gross. November of 2002. It was a snowy Saturday night at a party hosted at the dormitories of the St. John University in Collegeville, Minnesota. 20-year-old junior student Josh Guimond had just finished up writing a history paper for a class before heading out to the Mettencourt dormitory building. He was a young adult experiencing one of the many college experiences to have: a college party. Jon was accepted into St. John after graduating valedictorian from Maple Lake High School. St. John's campus was surrounded by woodlands that stretched out for miles. Guimond was enrolled as an honors student, pursuing a degree in political science, and seemed to have a good future ahead of him. That was until, at 11:45, Jon left the party without speaking a word to anyone. When he left his dorm that night to attend the festivities, he had brought nothing on his person. His wallet, glasses, coat, car keys, and the case to his contact lenses were all left behind. The walk back from the Metten Court to Josh's residency was only a 3-minute walk. The last anyone had seen Josh was at 12:15 a.m., where 2 witnesses saw him walking across a bridge trail. That was the last time anyone had ever seen Josh alive. In 2014, an age progression photo was created to show what Josh would look like today. Now, there have been speculations about this case going on for over 20 years. People online have made videos and posts and various different theories as to what could have happened to Josh. Ashley was no different. Ashley's branding for her new TikTok venture was Ashley Solves Mysteries. She wasn't just a tarot card reader, she was a true crime fanatic. The George Floyd content was just the start to a concerning trend for her videos, discussing real-life true crime cases, solved or unsolved, and making statements and certainties with no proof or evidence outside of her own tarot card readings. And her visions. When I say that Ashley was a psychic, I'm not just referring to her fancy card tricks. She legitimately had psychic visions of the future or the past, or whichever one is convenient for her at the time.
I have a gift. I have the ability to read into minds, read into past events, and into the future.
During her readings in regards to Josh's case, Ashley would make the statement based on her visions and her intuition with the cards that Josh's dorm mate, Nick Hydrukovich, was responsible for Josh's death. At the time of Josh's disappearance, Nick was hanging out with Josh's ex-girlfriend, Katie Benson. Keycard records at the time show Nick re-entering his dormitory after being up with Kate until he claimed to have left at 2:30 a.m. Nick and Katie were speculated to have been in a relationship at the time and might have motive to kill the ex-boyfriend, Josh. However, Katie and Josh were childhood friends. Plus, Katie herself claims in the Netflix reboot of Unsolved Mysteries that although her and Nick had an interest in each other, they never actually committed to a real relationship. And I mean, I don't really think she would lie about that, considering that by the time Josh had disappeared, they had broken up about a month prior. Katie was in a relationship with Josh for 4.5 years. Her not wanting to jump into a new relationship after a 4-year high school romance ended, and to get with, of all people, her ex's best friend? I mean, it would make sense that they wouldn't have a concrete relationship at the time. But no, not according to Ashley. Ashley, in a multi-part series, just straight up says that Nick was responsible for Josh's murder. And the motive wasn't even Katie, as was speculated. It was something completely different.
Solving the mystery of the death of Josh Guimond. So Nick's motive was he did not want to be put out of school because he was caught doing something immoral, like hooking up with straight men, pretending to be a woman, using Josh's computer and Yahoo Personals to do immoral acts. He felt like this could be the end of his world, that his dad would find out that he was gay. His dad was a person who was against that lifestyle, and he didn't want no smoke with his dad. So he felt like his world was ending. When Josh was fed up because he repeatedly did this. This wasn't the first incident. He repeatedly could not control himself, create profiles to date straight men. So he felt like his world was ending. He wanted to finish school. He was a senior, so that's why he killed Josh. But Josh was just leaving. He was gonna move out. But Nick was insecure about being gay and paranoid.
So that just came completely the fuck out of nowhere. So According to Ashley, Nick's motive for murder was because he was secretly hooking up with straight men on dating websites. Nick was also cross-dressing and was repeatedly caught by Josh using his personal computer to do immoral acts, as she says. Ashley claims that Josh was going to tell Nick's highly conservative father about what Nick was doing in their private time. So, Nick killed Josh. Now, what's really interesting about this is that the cross-dressing secret gay lifestyle thing is actually a theory that was part of the original investigation. Like, Ashley isn't just pulling this out of her ass. There is some validity to this. However, what Ashley fails to mention is that it wasn't Nick who engaged in this sort of like secretive lifestyle. It was actually Josh. In 2008, investigators were given access to Josh's computer for forensic analysis. They were able to do a wipe on the computer and found within Josh's browser data that he had been searching up how to make fake IDs. The reason why? Josh was speaking to men using an alternative Yahoo account under the persona of a woman. The theory goes that Josh had agreed to meet up with one of these men in person, was abducted by this stranger, and was possibly killed that way. When Josh was last seen on the bridge path, it was also reported a man driving an orange Pontiac Sunfire dropping off other men on campus. The driver was found and questioned, but it didn't really go anywhere. But what's crazy about this mystery driver was that by the time police had questioned him, his car was already destroyed. So in this aspect, I can't say that Ashley's completely pulling this out of her ass. Obviously, Ashley is familiar enough with the case and all of the theories to come up with her own. I mean, it's not really a clever theory. She just took a previous theory and just switched who was actually the secretly gay one. But the reason she doesn't get pinned for this coverage more is simply because of two things. For one, this is a 20-year-old cold case, so the investigation and speculation for the public is kind of just bound to happen by default. Yes, even to the extent of like crazy conspiracy theories that Ashley puts out. And number two, Nick has actually been investigated before, and there's probably some people out there that believe with good certainty that Nick probably had something to do with it. And the only reason I am saying this is mainly because Katie and his story doesn't actually line up with what time he left her residence. There's still like a whole hour unaccounted for, and people think because of this that Nick might be a suspect. Now, obviously, I have to say that everything is alleged, and all parties mentioned in regards to the case of Josh Guimond are innocent until proven guilty. So Ashley outright saying it was him isn't too surprising because people have already suspected him to begin with, but that can't really be said about our next case. Kirsnick Kahari Ball, also known as Takeoff, was an American rapper and the youngest member of the hip-hop group Migos, alongside fellow rappers and childhood friends Quavo and Offset. Takeoff has worked with a slew of other artists outside of Migos. He's made music with Cardi B, Lil Uzi Vert, and Drake. He had multiple Hot 100 hits, won 2 Grammy Awards, and was wildly successful both within his hip-hop group Migos and as a solo artist. On November 1st of 2022, Takeoff would attend a private party hosted in Houston, Texas at the 810 Billiards and Bowling. Earlier that evening, Quavo posted that he would be accompanying Jay Price Jr. to the venue for a birthday celebration for Jr.'s father, James Prince. In videos that circulated online, Quavo is seen walking away from the party after an altercation had occurred before the recording started. As soon as Quavo turned his back away,
Don't play like that, bro. Hey, let go. I ain't finna see
According to police investigating the scene, Takeoff was not the intended target of the shooting. Instead, he was shot by a stray bullet pulled by 2 armed gunmen, those suspected being 33-year-old Patrick Xavier Clark and 23-year-old Joshua Cameron. According to surveillance footage obtained by police, Patrick was the one who opened fire, whilst Joshua never appeared to have fired a shot. Joshua was arrested on possession of a weapon and unlawfully carrying a weapon with a felony conviction. Patrick, on the other hand, was charged with Takeoff's murder. The day he was arrested, he was found with a large amount of cash, an extended passport, and a Mexico itinerary, possibly indicating that he was planning to flee to Mexico. Although Patrick's attorney denies this accusation, Patrick since then has made his bond and is currently serving under house arrest until his trial, where he has entered a not guilty plea.
Even though your thugging days are gone, say I still rep your name forever, live on.
Now, with as much coverage and video evidence and documentation on this case, you'd think that anyone posting about this online would have enough information to at the very least have their facts straight, right? Take in all the details and come to a reasonable conclusion that the dude that was waving around a firearm probably was the one who did it. I mean, obviously, with the trial pending, I have to say, legally, everyone on trial for this murder is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But Ashley isn't as careful as I am. You won't fucking believe this shit, right? Even though we have an indictment in the case for Takeoff that pins Patrick Clark as the murderer, Ashley would make a series of TikToks claiming that Offset was the shooter. She made 17 videos claiming that Offset was the one who conducted this plot to get rid of Takeoff.
Offset ordered the hit that killed Takeoff and then went to his funeral because it's all a part of the strategy.
Now, I can't seem to find these videos anywhere anymore. The only snippet from these videos that I could find was from iNabber's video, but back when this Ashley is the Book of Life account was still active, she made a shit ton of content surrounding this case, indicating that Offset was responsible for his best friend's death. Now, something that should be addressed is just how obscenely wrong all of this is. I mean, just going into these cases and looking at the details of the investigations shows that these statements that Ashley is making can't possibly be true. There is some leniency with the Josh and Nick situation because Josh's case is unsolved and Nick was a person of interest at one point. But this idea that she presented of Nick living this secret gay lifestyle just simply can't be true, or can't be proven without a shadow of a doubt. She can't necessarily prove that the searches on Josh's laptop were done by Nick and not Josh. And the same can be said for Takeoff. There is video footage of what happened. The police know and understand what went down because it got captured on film. There's no mystery to be had here. The case is pretty open and shut, seemingly. But Ashley once again makes claims that the physical evidence just doesn't align with. I mean, if Takeoff was never the intended target anyways, how could there have been a plot by Offset to have him taken out? But just when you thought Ashley couldn't say anything else stupider, Ashley has now struck out 3 times, and her claims are now getting her sued. And this all came about when she covered the Idaho murders.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. It means so much to be able to talk to people about my research and sort of share what I've learned over the last about 10 years. So I'd like to first thank the Autry for allowing me to do this program. It was originally going to be in person, and for being flexible with our current pandemic and everything that's happening.
Rebecca Scofield is an assistant professor of American history at the University of Idaho. Most of her interest in teaching lies in the American West, gender history, LGBTQ topics, and pop culture. Her first book, published in 2019, examines how incarcerated men and gay-identified men contributed and cemented the popularity of the rodeo scene. She actually has done a lot of LGBTQ advocacy, including being the principal investigator for the Gay Roses Oral History Project, and co-creator of the web exhibit Voices of the Gay Rodeo. Within days of the Idaho 4 story breaking, Ashley was once again on TikTok, making her usual true crime psychic content about the latest case that was inescapable in the media. Only she really just used this story to make her big break in the most vile way possible. Using the Idaho 4 murder case as a way to gain notoriety, Ashley was making a damning claim that Rebecca was responsible for the murders.
Her secret was not just confined by Kaylee. Her secret is, all of them knows her secret. So then she felt like all of them can get it. All of them were fair game. But she kind of reined herself in. She left. She stopped going around so much, and she hired Jack DeCour because she felt like she was losing her point. She was losing her focus. She was losing her intent. So she needed to establish an intent, basically on who she was going to focus on killing versus they all probably know about me and they all have to die.
There is, I shit you not, hours of content of Ashley explaining in her version of events what happened to the Idaho 4. And what she says will shock you. I'm doing like the YouTuber like clickbait thumbnail titles. What she says will shock you. So here's the general gist of her claim. Rebecca Scofield and Kaylee Gonclaves met when Kaylee sought out Rebecca's guidance as a sort of counselor role.
When Rebecca Scofield mentored Kaylee Goncalves, sorry if I say her name wrong, Kaylee, about her academics and her future. During this time, Rebecca Scofield took a liking to her.
During their communications, Rebecca took a liking to Kaylee and wanted to explore her sexuality with this student. Kaylee went along with this relationship and dated in secret, where they allegedly were intimate, and Ashley puts great emphasis on this claim.
Kaylee and Rebecca dated. They were intimate. Kaylee and Rebecca, they had a thing. Other people knew about this thing. It was a secret, but it was a secret that was confined to Kaylee and her people and Rebecca.
Now, the relationship went sour because, I guess, Rebecca wasn't willing to come out of the closet and fully commit to her relationship to Kaylee. So, Kaylee threatened to tell her husband about the affair if Rebecca didn't leave the marriage. Rebecca got paranoid. She didn't want this relationship to come out, so she decided to plot Kaylee's murder. She stalked Kaylee and her friends to determine who Kaylee was hanging around with, to garner a list of people who Kaylee could have potentially told about their relationship. So effectively, all of them kind of had to go by proxy. Rebecca, I guess, solicited Jack DeCour, Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, to commit the murders.
The ex-people think, oh, he did this because he was jealous of Madison and Kaylee. Actually, it was Rebecca who was jealous of Madison, Rebecca Scofield. Jack wasn't mad at Kaylee or Madison. Jack just wanted the money. So apparently there was something that happened that interfered with his goals and his dreams. He wanted to be able to pursue whatever goals and dreams he had in life, and Rebecca Scofield kind of fed into that. She sold him a dream. She sold him a promise. You can finish school. You can start your career. I'll set you up on a solid foundation. Give him the money he needs. He'll have the housing and the money he needs to finish.
This all allegedly was done via communications by, and I'm not even kidding you, a collaborative literature book app. So Ashley is basically saying they plotted this murder on Google Docs.
So if there is anybody who doesn't care about spiritual wisdom or does not understand spiritual wisdom, and you have the authority to do more, to get evidence, you can, if you have the legal authority to, subpoena Rebecca Scofield's electronics. We subpoena these collaborative book apps, whatever you need to do to discover everything you need to know. She collaborated with all the people who helped her plan and execute the murders on that collaborative literature book app.
Now, to explain how the main suspect, Brian Cohenberg, was involved with Rebecca, she just kind of like shoehorned Brian as a part of the murder plot, as well as Jack DeCour as like a quick plan instead of the main plan. Really, Ashley kind of downplays Brian's involvement as like a pair of eyes to ensure that Jack would go through with the murders. So according to Ashley, Brian wasn't actually directly involved at all and was kind of used as a witness to make sure it gets done, I guess.
Anxiety led her to implement her second plan, which is to call or contact Brian Kohlberger with her app and asked him for help. She enticed him in a similar way that she enticed Jack DeCour. She used that to her benefit. Hey, I can fix this. You will need to transfer. You will need to do this. But I can put you on a better path. I can help you meet your goals. I can, money, whatever it is that he needed. She offered it to him as a solution to his issues, and he took the bait. So anyway, Brian Kohlberger they're going back and forth. It's not a calm conversation. They're arguing. She's like, no, you're gonna get the help. He's like, no, I'm not. So they're going back and forth about Brian Kohlberger even being there and helping. Brian Kohlberger is witnessing this argument. He starts to argue with tell Brian Kohlberger to back off. That's the reason why Rebecca Scofield got put in the middle of it anyway, because Brian Kohlberger got her, like, what's going on? So Brian Kohlberger just backs off. He says, forgive each other. I'm gonna turn a blind eye. So he turns a blind eye and leaves.
Like, Ashley straight up just says that he went to the scene of the crime, got into a fight with Jack, and decided, you know what? I'll just let him go on his murder spree. It's all forgiven. Who cares? And just fucking leaves. And why did Jack and Brian decide to do all of this? Money. They were offered a shit ton of money. Ashley emphasized that this was like a life-changing amount of money. Because yes, a university professor is making enough money to do that for 2 students, accumulating hundreds of thousands in student loans. Now, if this were the case, then we'd be dealing with like a grand conspiracy on our hands, right? That involves inappropriate student-teacher relationships, gay love affairs, an ex-boyfriend getting revenge, and a bystander taking the fall for it all. And that shit sounds awesome in like a true crime novella, right? But Ashley isn't writing a fiction novel. She legitimately thinks that this is exactly what happened. There's only a few issues with this story. Rebecca Scofield never had a single class with any of the Idaho 4. Not Zaina, not Madison, not Ethan, and especially not Kaylee. None of their past scheduling or classes enrolled shows a past history of these students taking Rebecca's classes. Now, this could be damning on its own, but what really kicks a bitch in the teeth, and I think is the most important thing to point out here, is that Rebecca wasn't even in Idaho at the time of the murders. Now, according to Ashley's theory, this doesn't really matter because this was a murder for hire plot, right? Okay, yeah, sure. Fine. Before the murders, according to Kaylee's mother, Jack and Kaylee were actually in talks of getting back together. So if Rebecca offered Jack this chance at making a lot of money and to get revenge against Kaylee for breaking up with him, why would Jack take it if they were going to get back together anyways? Like, none of this makes any sense. Jack has already been ruled out by police, and Brian has been caught already. Like, I don't know what more you want. And I didn't even get into, like, the crazier aspects of Ashley's claims. Like, how she claims Kaylee and Rebecca got into a car chase during an argument.
There was a big argument. It could have been like some type of car chase in which Kaylee attempted to tell Rebecca Scofield's husband, but ultimately didn't work out.
Or how about this one, where Ashley alleges that they went on vacation together in Mexico, and there were all of these eyewitnesses that spotted them together?
They potentially even went on some type of vacation or met up somewhere, maybe even Mexico, but that would need to be clarified because other people were there.
Or how about, apparently, according to Ashley's theory, Rebecca would have to have her devices subpoenaed. And once they had permission to look through her devices, Ashley alleges that they would find pictures and videos of the murders on Rebecca's phone.
She has pictures, videos, images, messages during the murders and the night of the murders, because if you watch this whole video, you'll know why. Because she got into an argument with Jack before that night for not communicating and told him he needed to communicate more. And yes, he did exactly what she asked. He communicated more. She has images, she has videos, and it's all on this collaborative book app under the guise of being fake. But of course, with the images and things of that sort, it's real.
And you know, I don't know much about law, right? I'm clearly not a lawyer. I'm not dressed like a lawyer, clearly. But you know, usually that's not how any of this shit works. Usually if you're gonna make a claim, you have to have the evidence with you before you make that claim. not make the claim and then demand that they find the evidence for you. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. Ashley isn't getting her information from like physical evidence that she has. It's because of visions and tarot cards. And I'm sure you guys are probably thinking like, you know, who really cares, right? I mean, this is clearly just some crazy lady with a tiny little platform that is just saying things that aren't gonna have an impact on anything. You'd think, right? I would agree with you on this fact if these videos didn't get millions of views. Now, I do need to emphasize that those views aren't prevalent to what the response was as a whole. A lot of people have covered this story, and the response has mostly been negative towards Ashley. However, before getting called out officially by bigger content creators, Ashley was actually having a lot of people in her audience validate her story. Even after she was cleared, though, there was still a huge mob from Ashley's fan base convinced that she had something to do with it. So, Rebecca filed her lawsuit. Which, I mean, honestly, given all of the other cases that we covered previously, this was a long time coming. You know, if there's a theme that I've noticed when it comes to the year 2023, it's either everyone is filing a lawsuit or is getting sued themselves. And I gotta ask, right, like, what the fuck's that about? That is another video for another time.
When I said I was chosen for this or I was sent for this and that God sent me on a mission to help with this case, I'm literally the only one who has made the connection.
After Ashley was sued by Rebecca Scofield, she had a terrible response to Rebecca's attempts for a cease and desist, to which Ashley completely ignored her attempts to get her to stop spreading these lies about her. Rebecca proceeded with her defamation lawsuit, to which Ashley had some time, it might have been like 30 days or so, to respond to the defamation suit. She didn't respond, which resulted in a default win for Rebecca. Ashley decided to counterclaim or to countersue the lawsuit against her to reopen the case that she ignored to turn it onto Rebecca and a bunch of other YouTubers that are named in the countersue, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Rebecca's defamation case was filed because Ashley was blatantly lying about her publicly, whereas Rebecca had only been trying to get her to stop lying and respond to the allegations against her. So countersuing for defamation wouldn't make sense because Rebecca wasn't lying about Ashley. Ashley explains that the reason why she decided this was the route to go was because she was not just trying to sue Rebecca for defamation, but also put everyone's videos that were made about Ashley on the fault of Rebecca herself. So Rebecca's lawyers filed a motion to dismiss the counterclaim because it was ridiculous. The lawyer overlooking the case wrote an opinion in the counterclaim suit that pins Ashley for filing 11 false counterclaims under the guise that the defamation case was to evade suspicion, obstruct justice, and to avoid criminal investigations. This is, of course, according to Ashley. Rebecca's lawyers basically call Ashley's claims against her clients as pure fanfiction. Interestingly, though, Ashley's response to the motion to dismiss was just to reinstate what she already accused Rebecca of in her response to the court. Now, meanwhile, whilst this is all happening, Ashley was still posting to TikTok. At the time of the lawsuit default, she actually decided that she was gonna go to Bali.
I would like to go to Bali.
I guess she was planning on moving to Bali to get her shit together, as she says. Now, Ashley's response publicly to the lawsuit was basically that it should have never been filed in the first place. It was improperly filed. It should have been thrown out in court.
And y'all need to stop asking me about this lawsuit. It should not even have been allowed. So I will file this motion to dismiss or whatever it is that it needs to file, but I shouldn't have to do it. It should have automatically been rejected for improper venue. It's not fair and it's not cool.
Now, here's the thing about all this, right? If Ashley did believe that she was being sued falsely, and she's posting all of these TikToks where around the time that she was posting them, she would have been getting sued, she should have taken that time instead of posting TikToks to respond or at least appeal the lawsuit. But she didn't do that. She ignored it, made fun of it on her page, and she told her followers that these lawsuits should have been thrown out in court. But if that's what she thought already, she should have at least used that time to appeal anyways, because by ignoring it and joking about it online and saying that the cease and desist was basically just toilet paper for her to wipe her own ass.
To put this demand letter Rebecca Scofield attorney sent me by tissue so I can wipe my with it.
She effectively just let this lawsuit default in a win for Rebecca anyways. Ashley would legally be required to bring forward her evidence to justify her claims against Rebecca for the defamation claim. And she says that she has evidence to validate her claims, but it has never been presented in court or publicly.
I have physical evidence against Rebecca Scofield that validates everything that I've said about her, but I can't speak on it now because it has to wait for court. So hopefully court doesn't take too long.
Because she has nothing. She's making all this shit up. The last video response about this was from 2 months ago. Now, Ashley uploaded this final response to her YouTube page. She's upset because she believes that the courts were against her from the very start.
The issue that I'm having now is that the courts are complicit with what Scofield has going on. So the judge I feel like the judge has done something fraudulent. Here's the thing, either he's like just trying to make friends instead of following the law, and something is off with this judge.
Well, yeah, that's because you never presented any physical evidence other than like your tarot cards and your gift.
Because I'm who I am and she's who she is, people just wanted to simply believe it. One, because they're demonic.
Dude, what the fuck?
And look, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a douchebag here, but that is not proof of anything. The courts are not going to take that as real proof. And even if they did, we'd be conducting trials like this was the Middle Ages or the fucking Salem witch trials. Ashley Guillard is no different than the Protestant Christian calling out witch. Ashley is angry and she says that she is facing repercussions for helping out people who, in her retrospect, don't actually deserve it.
I don't want to deal with this. This is not my case. But now I have to deal with this case because I have to protect myself. And because they put me in a position where I have to protect myself, and I put myself in this position too by trying overstepping boundaries and trying to help people who did not deserve my help. None of y'all, no people in this world deserve my help, is what I'm saying. This is exactly why when I said I was chosen for this or I was sent for this and that God sent me on a mission to help with this case, I'm literally the only one who has made the connection. I'm literally the only one that can help with this right now. And I gladly take the responsibility. I don't want to deal with this. This is not my case.
You are really dumb, for real.
And I gotta ask, right? What the fuck does that mean? You did your own little investigative work to solve the Idaho murders, right? That's why you did your readings and accused Rebecca, because you believe she's a suspect, right? You were trying to help the police investigating to find their killer, but also to help the victims' families who lost their loved ones and want answers as to what happened to their children. And now that you were rightfully proven incorrect, you're saying that all of those people, including the victims' families, never deserved your help anyways?
None of y'all, no people in this world deserve my help, is what I'm saying.
Bro, what the fuck is wrong with you? I mean, I guess you're right. They weren't looking for your help anyways because you were just blatantly lying about who killed their family members. Like, excuse me, Miss Ma'am, but they never asked for your help in the first place. And the reason why they never asked for your help is because you're a self-proclaimed psychic. Psychics aren't real. Grow the fuck up. So there have been a ton of different YouTubers like Emily D. Baker and the Mad Caster going over all of these documents in court. The only reason I didn't go into depths with these court documents is mainly because the Mad Caster and Emily D. Baker are like actual lawyers and they're better at understanding this shit than I am. But also, I don't really think that hyper-analyzing all of these legal documents is really that necessary to come to the conclusion that Ashley was fucked from the get-go. She defamed and slandered someone blatantly and publicly, and the lawsuit only exists to debunk the claims in a legal sense. I'm serious, you do not need a legal case to come to the conclusion that this is fucking bonkers. You know, funnily enough, if Ashley was even remotely right about any of this and did have psychic abilities to see Rebecca conducting this crime, she effectively has held so much information on this that, legally speaking, she has withheld all of this evidence that makes her almost complicit with the murders if this is the case. But it doesn't even matter because she's wrong and she's crazy. But that's the simple explanation, isn't it? And you guys know me at this point. I like making things more complicated than they actually are. The short, sweet, and simple version just isn't enough for me. So let's go over this in our final chapter.
Oh my god. Rebecca is suing me.
Sometimes finding out the why for these things, like why things happen on the internet, is difficult when you don't know this person on like a personal level. Like, you know, sometimes I have to remind myself that when I talk about all these crazy people I find on the internet, that I don't know their personal lives unless they give that information to the public. And for Ashley, I can only know what she is saying in passing. I'm not trying to violate any sort of like privacy here. I'm just going off of what she has presented to us publicly online. Also, I'm not a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything. I do think Ashley needs to see one though. In court documents, Ashley takes reference to the fact that she is a U.S. veteran whose trauma from service makes her ineligible to work a real job, which I thank her for her service. I have family who has served in the military and I have friends who also have done so, and they get a lot of respect and praise from me personally. I mean, it takes a lot of principle and dedication to move that far away for basics and then to your service positions being so far away from your friends and family for years. I'm not even like a religious person, but I do think about them and I pray for them because, especially here in the US, it can be a really shitty place for service people. I mean, I don't know what's personally going on in Ashley's life, but I can take a guess that the government and the systems at play probably have failed her and completely left her to her own vices without taking care of herself or her family. I'm not really sure what her husband does for work. I believe that he also serves in the military or he travels. I'm not sure of the validity of that, so don't quote me on it. Especially since Ashley has talked about traveling to Bali. It's just kind of weird to have her husband like traveling for work and for her to just up and leave to Bali on top of that. Now, it would be one thing if Ashley was only hurting herself. If she was financially fucking herself over with a lawsuit, then I would say, you know, tough shit for her. But unfortunately, it's not just her who is affected by this. It's her son who is also inadvertently gonna suffer. So Ashley mentions in the same video where she talks about traveling to Bali that her son doesn't want to go with her.
Issue is, my son does not want to come with me. He does not see the value that I see in it.
And I could imagine that's because he already has friends wherever Ashley lives and a well-established social life at school and his neighborhood. Ashley wants to take all of that and make him pick it all up and leave it behind because she decided to slander a random woman she never met. She wants to run away instead of face the consequences of her actions. The only one that really gets the shit end of all of this isn't Ashley, it's her son. Ashley is just refusing to take any accountability, meanwhile trying to run to Bali to avoid legal consequences and taking her son with her, even though he didn't do any of this. I could only imagine, based on her past service in the military, her own experiences as a retired military veteran in the United States, and her husband being away. I mean, there's a lot of sadness there.
I'm literally always alone, like for the past, 8 years? I want to bring a companion to Bali with me.
Probably a lot of trauma from serving in the military and her husband always being gone for work. Maybe this is all the cacophony of someone on the internet just trying to distract herself and find communities to be a part of. Maybe she was just really fucking bored, man. As Ashley says in her own videos, she doesn't know Rebecca personally. She doesn't have any connections or a personal vendetta against her. I'm almost certain that Ashley just decided to do all of this just to feel important. And as we discussed with our last video, it's attention-seeking behavior. She used these true crime cases to make them all about herself and her special abilities to get people to look at her, instead of focusing on like concrete proof. And when you validate someone's story that they're just passing off as the truth, just because they're begging for the world to see them and focus on them solely, that's not only dangerous for them to have their delusions validated, but it also scrutinizes the cases that they're covering. If we give enough credence to someone making shit up, then that'll take away attention from those working to make the truth known through real evidence. Now, thankfully, Ashley's case isn't as extreme to a point that she got to a level of credibility to overshadow the work currently being done to get real justice. But the victims of her lies should see the same justice too. Because it's becoming very apparent that Ashley is just gonna keep doubling down and not take any responsibility for the lives that she ruined with her card tricks and psychic visions. That's gonna be it for me. Thank you all for watching today's video. And thanks to all of these lovely creators for following the story and archiving the information and explaining the court documents for me, because I'm stupid. It made looking into this case far more easier and way less complicated, so do subscribe to all of these wonderful people. If you want to see more content from me and not miss a single upload, I would highly suggest subscribing because it's free. If you want to get access to content early, get exclusive content, and submit video ideas for the channel, I have a Patreon where you can get access to all of that. If you want to get updates from me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. But other than that, that's gonna be it for me. This was a wild one to cover, and it has been a fascinating look into TikTok's most infamous psychic. And until then, to all the dreamers and the schemers, remember to kick back, relax, and stay lazy. Dude, that was the gayest outro I've ever done in my life. Fuck, I gotta rectify this somehow. Here's a video of my boyfriend doing something silly behind a green screen. Oh god. Oh god.
Money. I wasn't ready to improvise.
Get this homeless man out of my house. I'm in love with a homeless man. I'm in love with... Put the money in the Patreon. Put the money in the bed. Put the money in the Patreon. Give me your money. Give me your money. So that I can afford to live. I look like shit. What would you do if a child walked up right in front of you? Would you want this child to go broke and homeless? I give everyone full permission to use that to your own vices. You're welcome. The end.